10 rock songs that were almost never released and became legends. What if I told you that some of the greatest rock songs ever made almost didn't exist? Not because the artists weren't talented, not because the songs were bad, but because someone said no. A label rejected it. A bandmate hated it. The artist himself wanted to destroy the tape. And yet, those exact songs went on to define generations. They became the anthems people remember on their deathbeds. The songs that play at stadiums and films in every corner of the world. Here's the strange part. The closer some of these songs came to being erased forever, the bigger they became. Today we're going through 10 rock songs that were almost never released and became absolute legends. And I promise you, by the time we reach number 1, you'll never hear these songs the same way again. Let's start. Number 10, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen. And we're starting here because this is probably the most famous example of a song that should never have existed. 1975. Freddie Mercury walks into the studio with an idea that made absolutely no sense on paper. A 6-minute song, no clear structure, no repeating chorus. 3 completely different sections, a ballad, an opera, and a hard rock finale, stitched together like they belong to 3 different songs. The label heard it and said one thing: this will never work on radio. They weren't being cruel, they were being logical. Radio stations had rules. Songs had to be under 3 minutes. Familiar, predictable, safe. Bohemian Rhapsody was none of those things. But here's where the story changes. Freddie refused to cut it. Not 1 second. He fought for every minute of that song like it was personal, because it was. DJ Kenny Everett got an early copy, played it on radio almost as a joke, and the phones didn't stop ringing. People were calling in asking, what was that? Within weeks, it hit number 1 in the UK, stayed there for 9 weeks. And that label, the same one that said it would never work, they stopped talking, because some songs don't follow the rules, they rewrite them. Number 9. Hotel California, Eagles. And this one is interesting, because the song almost died before it even had lyrics. 1976. Guitarist Don Felder is sitting alone at his home studio, playing around with a guitar melody. No plan, no pressure. Just a riff that kept going somewhere he didn't expect. He recorded a rough demo on a cassette tape, sent it to the band, and the reaction? Mixed, at best. Some members didn't connect with it. The direction felt too dark, too strange for where the Eagles were at that moment. They were already successful. They had a sound that was working. This demo felt like a detour, but Don Henley heard something in it. He took that cassette, sat with it, and started building lyrics around the melody. And what came out wasn't just a song, and it was a story. A metaphor. A place you check into but never leave. The label had their own concerns. The song was over 6 minutes long. The intro alone, and just guitar, no vocals, lasted nearly 1.5 minutes. Nobody does that, they said, but the Eagles didn't cut it. And that guitar intro? Today, it's one of the most recognized opening sequences in the history of rock music. Played it once and you know exactly what's coming. Hotel California went on to win the Grammy for Record of the Year. The detour became the destination. Number 8, Johnny B. Goode, Chuck Berry. And this one has a detail that most people don't know. A detail that changes the entire story. 1958. Chuck Berry writes a song about a young guitar player from Louisiana. No education, no connections, no plan. Just a boy sitting by the railroad tracks, playing like his life depended on it. But here's the part that almost never made it to the final version. The original lyric wasn't Johnny Be Good, it was Colored Boy. Chuck Berry wrote it that way because that's who the character was. That's who the story was about. A young black kid in the American South with nothing but a guitar and a dream. But 1958 America had rules about what could be said on radio. What could be sold in certain stores, what certain audiences were allowed to hear. So the label pushed back. Hard, change it, they said. Make it work for everyone, and by everyone, they meant white radio audiences. Berry changed the lyric. Country Boy replaced what he originally wrote. The song was released, and it exploded. Number 1. Everywhere. A guitar riff so iconic that decades later NASA literally sent it to space on the Voyager Golden Record as a representation of human music. But that original version, that original truth, it was almost erased completely. The song survived. The full story nearly didn't. Number 7. Born to Run. Bruce Springsteen. And this is the story of a man who nearly destroyed one of the greatest rock songs ever recorded, with his own hands. Year 1974. Bruce Springsteen is under pressure that most artists never survive. His first 2 albums had critical respect, but poor sales. The label was watching. Time was running out. He needed something that worked, or the whole thing was over. So he went into the studio with everything he had, and then he stayed there. For 6 months, over 100 takes of the same song, the same riff, the same structure, recorded again and again and again. Springsteen kept hearing something in his head that wasn't coming out through the speakers. A sound bigger than what they were capturing. A feeling he couldn't quite reach. There were nights he picked up the master tape and seriously considered destroying it. Not out of anger, out of exhaustion, out of the feeling that maybe what he was chasing simply didn't exist. But his engineer John Landau, the same man who famously wrote, "I have seen the future of rock and roll" after watching Springsteen live, talked him back every single time. They kept going, and eventually something clicked. That wall of sound, that desperation in the vocal, that sense of 2 people trying to escape something they couldn't even name. Born to Run became the song that saved Bruce Springsteen's entire career. Sometimes the thing worth chasing takes 100 attempts to catch. Number 6. Stairway to Heaven. Led Zeppelin. And this one is strange, because the resistance didn't come from the label. It didn't come from radio. It came from inside the band itself. 1971. Jimmy Page had been building this song in pieces for almost 2 years. A quiet acoustic opening that slowly, deliberately builds into something massive. No rush. No shortcuts. Just a staircase. One step at a time. But not everyone was convinced. Robert Plant was uncomfortable with the lyrics. He felt. Think about that for a moment. One of the most famous songs in rock history. Never released as a single. The label wanted it. Radio wanted it. But Led Zeppelin refused. They felt releasing it as a single would cheapen it, reduce it, turn something enormous into a product. So it lived only on the album. Led Zeppelin 4. No single. No radio push. No promotional campaign. And yet somehow, it became the most requested song in FM radio history. For years, consecutively, a song they almost didn't finish, almost didn't keep, and refused to sell separately, became the definition of what rock music could be when nobody tells you what to do with it. Number 5, I Can't Get No. Satisfaction, Rolling Stones.
Here's a #1 national hit song that was heard for the first time in the world right here on Shindig.
And this one starts in the middle of the night in a hotel room with a man who was barely even awake. 1965. Keith Richards wakes up at 2 a.m. with a melody in his head. He reaches for the tape recorder he kept by his bed, a habit he had developed specifically for moments like this. Plays the riff, mumbles a rough idea of the chorus, and falls back asleep. The next morning, he wakes up and checks the tape. The riff is there, fully formed, exactly as he heard it. And after that, silence. He had fallen asleep while recording. The rest of the tape was just Keith Richards snoring. But here's where the story gets interesting. He brought it to the band, and Mick Jagger's reaction wasn't excitement. It was doubt. Too simple, Jagger said. The structure was too repetitive, the chorus too on the nose. He didn't think it was serious enough to represent where the Stones were going as a band. Keith Richards himself saw it as a rough demo. A starting point, not a finished song. Even after they recorded it, the band voted on whether to release it. The vote was not unanimous, but it went out anyway. Satisfaction debuted and within weeks hit #1 in the United States.
Here's a #1 national hit song that was heard for the first time in the world right here on Shindig. And here are the guys who made it
Stayed there for 4 weeks. Sometimes the simplest idea in the room is the most powerful one. Nobody just has to recognize it first. Number 4. Smells Like Teen Spirit, Nirvana. Yeah, and this one hurts a little, because the man who wrote it never really made peace with what it became. 1991. Kurt Cobain sits down and writes a riff that he himself described as an attempt to copy the Pixies. Loud, quiet, loud. Simple structure, almost too simple. He wasn't trying to create a generation-defining moment. He was trying to write a good punk song. That was it. But here's the detail that changes everything. Cobain was deeply uncomfortable with mainstream success. He had spent years in the underground music scene at a world that valued authenticity over popularity. A world where selling too many records meant you had sold out, and Smells Like Teen Spirit sold everywhere. MTV put it in heavy rotation. Radio picked it up instantly. Suddenly, Nirvana wasn't an underground band anymore. They were the biggest rock band on the planet, and Cobain hated it, not the song, but what it represented. The loss of control. The feeling that something deeply personal had been turned into a product. He started avoiding playing it live, called it exhausting, said audiences only came to hear that one song. The label, meanwhile, couldn't have been happier. Nevermind went on to sell over 30 million copies worldwide. It didn't just top charts, it ended an entire era of hair metal and rewrote what rock music looked like overnight. A song its own writer wanted to escape. That became impossible to escape for everyone else. Number 3. Like a Rolling Stone, Bob Dylan.
Once upon a time, you dressed so fine, through the bumps of dime in your prime.
And this one is a direct confrontation between an artist and an entire industry that told him, you cannot do this. 1965. Bob Dylan walks into Columbia Records with a song that is 6 minutes long. 6 minutes. At a time when the standard radio single was 2.5 minutes maximum. 3 if you were lucky. The label didn't just hesitate, they refused. 6 minutes is not a single, they said. Radio stations won't touch it. Nobody has the patience for it. Cut it down, make it work, follow the rules. Dylan's response was simple. No. He had written something that needed every single one of those 6 minutes. A rolling, building, relentless piece of writing that didn't feel like a pop song because it wasn't one. It was something closer to a novel compressed into music, a character study, an attack, a mirror held up to someone's face. The tension went back and forth for weeks. Eventually, Columbia backed down, released it at full length. Radio stations said they wouldn't play it. And then one station did, just to see what happened. Phones started ringing. Like a Rolling Stone climbed to number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100. It was kept off number 1 only by a Beatles single, which at that moment was arguably the only thing on earth powerful enough to stop it. Rolling Stone magazine later named it the greatest song ever recorded. A song the label refused to release. Became the measuring stick for everything that came after. Number 2. Yesterday, Beatles.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far.
And this one is perhaps the strangest story on this entire list, because the man who wrote it spent 3 weeks convinced he had stolen it.
As though they're here to stay. Oh, I believe
1964.
in yesterday.
Paul McCartney wakes up one morning with a complete melody in his head. Fully formed, every note exactly where it needed to be. He walks straight to the piano and plays it through from beginning to end without stopping. And his immediate reaction wasn't excitement, it was panic. This is too good, he thought. This already exists somewhere. I must have heard this before and forgotten where. Because melodies don't just arrive like this. Not complete, not perfect, not on the first try.
For Paul McCartney of Liverpool, opportunity now.
So McCartney did something unusual.
No, she wouldn't say.
For 3 weeks, he played that melody to everyone he could find. Band members, producers, friends, music industry people, anyone who might recognize it. Nobody did. He went to George Martin, played it for him carefully. Martin listened, thought about it seriously, and told him the same thing everyone else had. Paul, this is yours. Even then, McCartney wasn't fully convinced. He held on to his doubt longer than most people hold on to anything. The Beatles almost left it off the album entirely. Some members felt it was too soft, too simple, too far from the band's rock identity.
Yesterday.
John Lennon had his reservations. The arrangement, strings, no band, felt like a different group entirely. But it was recorded, released, and went on to become the most covered song in recorded history.
Hide away. Oh, I believe in you.
Over 2,200 versions by different artists. A song its own writer almost didn't believe was his.
Oh, for Paul McCartney of Liverpool, opportunity.
Number 1. Imagine. John Lennon. And we end here because no song on this list came closer to being something completely different.
It's easy if you try.
Or nothing at all. 1971. John Lennon is sitting at a white piano in his home in England. He has a notebook full of ideas that Yoko Ono had been developing for years. Concepts about peace, about vision, about asking people to see a world that didn't exist yet.
Imagine all the people.
Lennon had been circling these ideas for a long time, but he was hesitant. The message felt too direct, too soft for someone with his reputation. Lennon had spent years being provocative, political, aggressive in his art. This was something quieter, something that asked instead of demanded. He called it too simple, too on the nose. The label had different concerns entirely. The political undertones made them nervous. 1971 was a complicated moment.
It's easy if you try.
Vietnam, protest movements, government tension. A song asking people to imagine no countries, no religion, no possessions was not exactly safe territory for a major record label. There were serious conversations about changing the lyrics. Every suggestion. Every single one. Imagine was released exactly as he wrote it, and within weeks it was everywhere. It reached number 1 in multiple countries.
No hell below us.
Became the anthem of an entire movement. And today, more than 50 years later, it is still played at every major moment when the world needs to believe something better is possible. A song its own writer called Too Simple. Every single one of these songs was one decision away from disappearing forever. One label executive with more power, one artist who listened to the doubt instead of pushing through it, one vote that went the other way. And we never hear any of them. No Bohemian Rhapsody, no Stairway to Heaven, no Imagine. But here's the thing that actually matters. The doubt was real, the resistance was real, the pressure to change, to cut, to soften, to follow the rules, all of it was real. And they made it anyway. Not because they were fearless, but because something in them understood that this specific song, at this specific moment, needed to exist exactly as it was. That's not luck. That's conviction. And maybe that's the real lesson here. The greatest things ever created almost never were. Which means somewhere right now, something equally important is sitting unfinished. Doubted. One decision away from being abandoned. Don't abandon it. If this video made you hear these songs differently, even just one of them, then it did exactly what it was supposed to do. Because that's the thing about stories behind music. Once you know them, you can't unhear them. Every time Stairway to Heaven comes on, you'll think about Jimmy Page. Every time you hear Imagine, you'll remember what Lennon almost gave up. The song changes, not the music, but the meaning behind it. If you want more stories like these, the moments behind the music, the decisions that changed everything, subscribe. Because this channel is built exactly for that. And I want to know something from you. Which song on this list surprised you the most? Drop it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you're already thinking about what comes next, the next video is going to hit even harder than this one. Stay tuned.